Hi, this is Gary, and this is another video in the series for ESTEST migration. And this video is quite an advanced tutorial and showing you how to set up the ldap server that we use with estest.ucdavis.edu that ties in the user accounts for our website between multiple services such as ESTEST, Drupal, and Track. They all use the ldap, and we'll be configuring some of those services later on in some other videos. But for now, let's see how to install and sort of restore the ldap server that we had from estest.ucdavis.edu. So the ldap server that we use is opends, and you can get it from their website, opends.java.net. We use opends 2.2 update 1. And you can just download this zip file and put it on your desktop, like I've done here. For this installation, the source tree or whatever, the archive that it unzips to is basically the installation directory. So what you want to do is to go to the parent directory where you want to install this, opends, and say unzip, opends, and then you see we have that basically installed here. So what we want to do here now is to run setup, just a clean setup using this script, and it's going to launch basically the graphical setup, the interface for that. And so this is quite useful in setting this up. You just go through next and you answer some server settings. You can change the host name, and I'm not sure exactly what that's going to do to the restore process, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But for now, we're going to just assume a direct migration from ESTEST, so the local host that we're actually using here, we assume to be the new ESTEST. So we're just going to call this ESTEST. The default ports are quite fine. The root user DN, you should just probably leave it as directory manager, and then you put in some password. And then click next. Okay, so you just leave this as a standalone server. For here, you want to change to the directory base DN to basically be the domain name of your website. So what you want is, and it's split by the dots. So if your domain name is, for example, example.com, it would be dc equals example, dc.com. In our case, it's going to be dc equals ESTEST, dc equals UCDavis, dc equals edu. Okay, and we click next here. So just review that that's okay. We're going to create it with these settings, and we're only going to create the base DN data. So only create the base data with nothing else. And we're going to start the server when it has been completed. So we click finish here, and you just wait for it to finish. So I guess during this time, I'll talk about the plan to restore the users from the ldap server at estest.ucdavis.edu. Basically, opends also gives you a backup and restore feature that just involves copying some files around very simply. But if you're going to change like the host name or the base directory name, I think that's going to affect how the backup and restore works. So you might be better off just by exporting the LDIF file directly from an ESTEST, from wherever your ldap server happened to be before the migration, and manually editing it down for the new server after the migration, and then importing that LDIF file. But that's not something we're going to talk about in this tutorial. Okay, so this could take a few minutes or so just to get everything set up. But opends is actually, I found, quite easy to use in terms of has graphical interfaces for everything, and it's relatively stable, and it just works. Okay, so now that it's the server is set up completely, what we want to do is to launch the control panel. All right, and this is another sort of graphical user interface to really manage the LDAP server that you have set up. So go ahead and input the password for the directory manager that you set up previously. Click OK. So the idea behind backup and restore here, see we have just this empty LDAP server with one entry. That's the base entry. What you would usually do is to make a full backup of the previous LDAP server that you had at the original host server. In our case, it would be estest.ucdavis.edu, and that's going to save to a backup path that you specify. That's usually opends/back, and I've gone ahead and done that before. So if I go here, what we want to do is to restore it to the same directory in our new LDAP server. So the command to do that for our host server is scp.edu, and then we're going to go to the directory where opends is installed on estest.ucdavis.edu, and that's this directory. Back. And then we're going to copy everything from that straight into this directory that is basically the same directory on the new server. Okay, so we got these two files, which is an info file and then the actual backup of the user root and some, date time tag, for instance. So in the local host in the new server, we're not going to back up. We're actually going to go to restore, and see here it's located the available backup that we created. So just go ahead and select the backup you'd like to restore and click OK. And it will say that the server information will be overwritten. That's fine because we have no server information yet. And just say yes. And it says here it's completely restored. So now we see that instead of one entry, we have 63 entries. So we'll take that as an indicator that all the user accounts from our previous LDAP server have been restored to this server. Okay, so that's basically the installation of OpenDS, and what I'm going to do now is to stop the OpenDS server and show you how to configure OpenDS to start on the next boot for this server. So just to stop the server, you just say stop, and you continue, and it'll stop the server code, and everything's fine. Okay, I mean, the control panel for the directory server will still be open, but you can see that it's not connected to the LDAP server. But you can perfectly go ahead and just close these windows as well. Okay, so to create the link for the startup script, OpenDS provides a sort of tool to do that, and that's this tool in their bin directory. It's create RC script, and the only parameter it takes is the output file name. So we're just going to call it ldap.ds. Right, and you see here that it's created ldap right there. Okay, so the same sort of thing to configure something in startup, you're going to have to go to etc init.d and then ln soft link this file. To this directory. And you're going to have to do this with a sudo command. Okay. You see that there. And so now it's just a matter of applying update RC to this one. D ldap ds defaults. And we need to do that with a sudo. Okay, so we see here that ldap.ds is now configured for startup. So you can verify that by going to any of the startup directories, and then we can see that this is ldap.ds, and it's going to give you, a couple options if you want to try to apply it. We can start it from here manually, just like that. And we see here that the ldap server is actually started. You can verify this by starting up the control panel in the install directory for OpenDS, and it's going to ask you for your directory manager user password again. So if you enter that in, it's going to go here and see here it's still 63 entries. And so this is an indication that everything is working fine. You can stop it, you can restart the server, and on boot, the ldap server from OpenDS is going to start, and we're going to have access to the old user credentials from estest.ucdavis.edu, except on this new localhost server.